Hi guys, we are here today and we are going to talk about riding when you're pregnant, which, by the way, is going to be a non-judgmental conversation, because to us, we don't care if you wanted to stop riding the day you found out or until the day before you had a baby,
or even the morning of.
the child having the child. But it's something we want to talk about because it is an emotive subject. And I think a lot of equestrians have their own view on it, and probably non-equestrians as well. And I think that there's probably a lot of mother-in-laws and partners and friends and all sorts of people that will have a view about you riding your horse when you're pregnant, including doctors, etc. And so we just want to discuss it, and some of the things that we probably want to look into are what the benefits are of continuing to ride. I think we need to highlight those a lot, because there are a lot of benefits, especially mental health benefits. How being pregnant affects your confidence, which it hugely did mine. And then difficulties in the later months of pregnancy, i.e. getting on the horse. And then there's also various other subjects such as handling horses when you're pregnant, chores, competing, feeling judged, etc., etc. And so I'm going to hand straight over to Katie, because I actually have never asked you this, but when did you ride until?
So I rode, well, I guess the first thing to say is I actually didn't know I was pregnant.
Oh yes,
I actually didn't know I was pregnant until 26 weeks, so it's nearly 6.5 months.
Do you want to tell them why you didn't know you were pregnant?
I just thought I'd eaten too much pasta.
No, but you were struggling with periods.
Yeah, I was struggling with just basically really horrific PCOS symptoms for the 18 months leading up to that. So I felt exactly the same, aka rubbish, throughout the entire time that I wasn't pregnant. So then when I got pregnant, I just didn't know. So anyway, that was the first part of that story.
Sometimes it's best not to.
Yeah.
It's a good job it was you actually and not me, because you drink a lot less than me.
And also, I would, as you said to me when I found out, it's like the Amazon Prime of babies.
It is, because those first 3 months when you can't tell anybody are actual torture, because they're the months you feel worse as well.
Well, luckily for me, I just felt the same as usual.
Just felt
the same as usual. So I actually rode until I was 8 months, just after 8 months pregnant, because I felt like I'd been doing it the whole time anyway.
What were you doing with him?
So I think I'd mentioned this in our welcome podcast previously, but Leo, my horse, he's an Irish Draft cross warm blood. He's just turned 5 this year, and I bought him in October last year. I then fell pregnant in the November. Yes, a celebratory time, perhaps.
Maybe that's got something to do with Leo.
It has. My husband and I actually blame Leo for all that's happened.
You should have called Rafe Leo.
No.
No.
But no, I bought Leo to be basically a riding club horse. I just wanted to have fun, had no intention to really compete with him, not on an affiliated level anyway. Just wanted to have something that I could have a laugh with. And
he's had a laugh with you instead.
He has had a laugh with me instead.
So why did you stop at 8 months?
To be honest, it was just the discomfort of getting on and off that was the main issue, actually. I didn't feel very much pain throughout riding at all.
Neither did I, actually.
Towards the very end, I felt a little bit more stretching of my sort of skin and ligaments across my bump, but I didn't really feel pain. But I felt like I was because it was getting more difficult to get on and off, and I had to ask my husband to winch me on and off. It probably wasn't safe for me to be doing it for much longer, because I just I couldn't get myself in and out of a situation quick enough.
Yeah,
basically.
I get that.
So yeah, that's why I stopped.
Shall I tell you when I started and stopped?
Yeah, go on.
Then we can move on.
Yeah.
So I rode until I was 7 months, and then I stopped completely. But I carried on doing all the yard chores, and actually at the time we had a couple of thoroughbreds that we were looking after, like on racehorses on holiday, which was quite a scary thing to do, taking them down the field. But early on, when I was first pregnant, I, unlike Katie, I actually knew I was pregnant. I actually went eventing when I was really early, like maybe 10 weeks. And it was an utter disaster because
I actually turned up for that one, didn't I?
No, did you?
Yeah,
Did
I
you see me
think-
cry and throw a paddy?
Yeah, I think I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh no, how embarrassing. I was feeling so backwards about going forwards on him that I just didn't ride him into any jumps. And then he ended up stopping at like fence number 10 or something. And I got angry with him, and then I walked back crying. And I thought, I don't want to finish on this, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to compete him as I got later on. And I didn't want to finish my kind of eventing year on that low. And so then I took him out a couple of weeks later on my own, and we had a lovely time, and I didn't have any pressure, didn't have anybody looking at me. My partner wasn't even there, and it was just me and my horse, and we had a really, really nice time. And then I just carried on hacking him out for the next however many months. How many months are you pregnant? 9. So the next like 6 months I carried on hacking him out, and then I stopped for the same reasons as you. I couldn't get on and off. When I think I was about 7 months. But did you get that when I was riding, I used to get, I know you said you didn't get any pain, but I used to get this thing called, I don't think this is the medical term for it, but it's called lightning fanny.
It's lightning crotch, babe.
No, it's lightning fanny.
Crotch.
Crotch?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I get lightning fanny. You might get lightning crotch.
I actually got that, I think from 37 weeks. So really late on. Really late on. But yeah, it wasn't very comfortable.
No, it wasn't. But I also lost my balance.
Yeah.
And just felt a bit more wobbly.
Did you feel? Because I think I told you this. Part of the reason I knew I was pregnant was, or looked to think that I might be pregnant, was I couldn't actually hold my breath after.
Yes, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, and you kept losing. You were very breathless, weren't you? Yeah.
And obviously, when there's feet in your lungs, it makes it harder to breathe.
Yeah.
But did you feel breathless at all when you were riding?
Not riding. I actually found riding much more therapeutic, and it's almost, and it still is. It's almost like your meditation, isn't it? When I was riding, I was okay, but don't forget, I was still I was only walking and trotting, because I found cantering too hard, because I couldn't hold onto the horse. And the strength wise, it wasn't breathlessness, but strength wise, my legs went. I couldn't.
Yeah, I found that as well, that the breathlessness being one thing, me and my horse not very fit together.
Well, walking down the field, at one point I've got a photo of me laying on the ground because I was too tired, and it's only like 10 steps.
But I found not only the breathlessness a problem, but as your bump gets bigger and bigger and your ligaments are stretching, you then get to a point where your legs are going in completely opposite directions to the way that you think that they're going. So
you do lose your balance, don't you? Even walking.
Yeah,
I know.
So yeah, I totally remember that. And so I don't think I ever actually asked you this whilst you were pregnant, but how did Oscar's temperament and who he is as a person, as a horse, how did that affect you physically and mentally whilst you're riding while pregnant? So for anyone that doesn't know Oscar, who is he?
He is an absolute legend of the highest proportion. He is an ex-racehorse that was in training with a lady called Zoe Davison, who was also a legend. And she sadly passed away around 4 years ago now of cancer. And I took him on just before she passed away. And it was really, really important to her that he went to a lovely home. And she tried to convince me to take him. And in the end, I couldn't really say no. I'd been riding him for a long time in training and then afterwards. And he kind of like adopted me. He took me under his wing. My mum had just died. I was going through a really horrible breakup. And we are now soulmates. But
I feel a bit teary.
but in talking about him, I thought because he's a very clever horse, I thought he'd be really receptive to me being pregnant. I thought he'd look after me. I thought he'd love Olive when she arrived. None of that happened. He's very selfish. And if anything, his nose has been put entirely out of joint and he got very depressed. And yeah, he is only just sort of coming around to the idea that I have another baby.
So when you were pregnant, do you feel like Oscar knew, before you did?
Or... I don't know about that. Are you talking about the event where we stopped at the jump because both of us were literally like, we may as well have just walked around the course backwards, and we would have got better. We would have done better. I think that was both of us. My hormones at that stage were so bad that Alex is lucky to be alive.
Oh, yeah, and I can confirm for anyone listening, Sophie's partner Alex does actually still live. He's breathing.
He's still breathing. He's alive and kicking actually. Did you get the hormones at the beginning?
I don't know, love.
Oh yeah, she doesn't know. My hormones were all over the shop, and that is not conducive of a nice, peaceful partnership between you and your horse. And I think Oscar kind of went, I can't do this with her because she's mental. And I don't think he knew I was pregnant. Oh, maybe he did.
Whereas, I'd just got my new horse.
You didn't know him.
I didn't know him at all.
Yeah.
And I was just going into it thinking this is a 4-year-old, just sort of fumbling my way around with him. But
without being pregnant, that's quite scary anyway.
But I felt like even when I found out, I suddenly had this sort of moment of reflection where I was like, he's actually really looked after me. Oh, and he knew much earlier than I did.
I think everyone knew earlier than you did.
Yeah, probably. But he definitely knew earlier than I did, because there were moments where he could have reacted to something and he didn't, or when we were in the stable and he'd like sort of be nuzzling me and I'd be thinking, what are you doing, you weirdo? And me thinking
he
knew much further along than I did. But that's one of the reasons that I continued to ride him for as long as I did, because I thought, for a 4-year-old, he's been so sensible to this point.
Talking of nuzzling your belly, you've actually just triggered a memory, because I thought the same about Oscar, and somebody said to me at one point during being pregnant, and somebody said to me, oh, he's so gentle around you and blah, blah, blah. And literally the next day, he came up to me and headbutted me directly in the belly. And so I was like, I take it all back about you, Oscar. You little bastard.
So, in all fairness, he is actually quite selfish. Okay,
he is selfish. Leo's not, though. What a legend.
Whereas, actually, I think if most people on the yard at the moment that look after Leo would say that he's an arsehole.
And he's a bit of a
he's a brute.
Yeah, he's a bit of a brute, isn't he?
He's
massive, everyone. He's huge.
Chunky boy.
He's a big, chunky chestnut. And very handsome, though.
He is probably 3 times the width of Oscar. Just
but Oscar is a very petite little man.
He's a very petite little thoroughbred.
Yeah.
This thing is made of, well, tree trunks.
He's gorgeous. That is actually a good point, that he potentially did know before you.
Yeah. So everyone would have said he was a bit...
He had a very long time to work it out.
Yeah, yeah. So we've kind of talked about, like each of our horses and how we felt like they've reacted, I guess, to our pregnancies.
How did people react to you riding? Like, as in people like your family, your partner, your friends, your doctor.
um, so family and friends didn't dare say anything ever. I'm quite strong-willed. So I think family and friends knew that it didn't matter what they said.
You were going to do it
I was
anyway.
going to do it anyway. And again, because I'd been doing it for so long, I knew the horse well enough.
Yeah.
Um,
you did sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I knew the horse well enough, and I knew my own limitations, I think, as well. That's the other thing, like knowing when is sensible and when isn't, and how I was feeling in my body.
Did you feel judged by your doctor? Did people put you off riding?
Interestingly, the midwife I had was a rider, and also
Oh really?
yeah,
That's kind of handy.
She was a rider, so because everything had been such a shock, and also during this time of finding out I was pregnant, my husband's mum died, so we were going through a real
huge emotional turmoil.
We were going
on
through
top of having to prepare for a baby.
We were going through such up and downs as a couple that actually the midwife just looked at me and said, "You need to do this still.
Yeah.
You need to be having some level of normality with your life."
Yeah.
So she was very supportive. In fact, even my consultant surgeon said, "If this is keeping you sane and happy, do it. Just, don't take lots of risks." I think you said earlier you were doing a lot of walk and trot. People said to me, don't, just stick to walk. And I put the digital 2 fingers up to that and carried on doing what I was doing, but not at great pace.
Yeah.
Because Leo doesn't do anything at great pace.
No, and also like you said, you know your limitations. And so I tried to, at the time I actually had 2 x-race horses and one of them's out on loan now. And the Pete, who I was riding as well at the time, could be quite headstrong, and he can be. And so having a canter on him, if you're behind somebody, he would pull you. And I could really feel that in my lack of muscles around my belly, where I've usually had quite a good core. I did not have a core anymore. It was gone. And it still is. RIP my core. So I could really feel that. But I think for me, I did actually feel quite judged by people. And between my partner and I, my partner rides, and between us, we look after a few other people's horses and ride them for other people. And it was actually them that said, "Oh, I don't want you riding my horse anymore because you're pregnant, and what if something happens?" And they would feel responsible. But that was my choice. But I could kind of see it from their point of view as well.
I think that's a really interesting point you raise, actually. If this is your profession, if your profession, or you're being paid to ride someone else's horse, like, do you think you'd have, carried on? Or I'm not sure I would.
What, as in riding? If it was your profession?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people don't have necessarily a choice. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't have a choice.
But I think
I don't know. Write in and let us know.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what other people's situation is with that, because obviously I just have one personal horse that I'm not good enough for anybody else to pay me to ride their horse. But I think if I were in that position, I wouldn't also want to give them the guilt of if something went wrong, maybe.
Yeah, I think that people take it upon themselves to look after you when you're pregnant. And actually, something that it wasn't so much the riding thing that annoyed me. What annoyed me is people like wanting to carry stuff for me, and like, I'd be carrying a handbag or a bag of Sainsbury's shopping into the house or something, and Alex would be like, I'll get that, leave it, put it down. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am pregnant. I haven't suddenly lost the use of my legs. Do you know what I mean? I found that annoying.
I think people do hone in on the physical lifting stuff. And one thing that actually makes me laugh about this is because I'm an idiot, we are getting our house renovated and have been the whole time that I've been pregnant and still now. And we had our kitchen being done. Literally, it got finished on the Friday, gave birth on the Monday, but that's a story for another day. But the kitchen itself got delivered and was left on the driveway because the guy wouldn't bring it in. So at 37 weeks pregnant, I'm lifting all of the units,
taking them into the kitchen,
into the house.
That's quite silly.
Well, you would think that, and maybe I should have been more, I guess. I mean, I was at home on my own. I had no choice. It was going to rain.
True.
But the postman came along and said, "You shouldn't be doing that. You're pregnant." And I said, "But Dave, I've been lifting hay bales this morning." Like,
do you want to know what though? There's no way that a pregnant woman on this planet has ever not taken advantage of that at some point. Like, my worst chore to do on a yard is taking the wheelbarrow around, and I didn't do it for nearly 9 months. Alex, I can't do that. He was like, "You'll lift a bag of Denji out of the car and put it in your feed bucket, but you won't take the wheelbarrow around to the muck heap." Okay, I'll do it.
I think as well, you know, I'm just a bit too stubborn for my own good,
Yeah,
really.
well, it's not. I'm not stubborn at all. I just like to get things done.
Yeah.
So like, I just have to get it done, and then it's off my table, and I don't have to ask people to do it.
And actually, just this kind of leads on to one of the questions that we kind of raised for each other when we were thinking about this podcast was care-wise, like around the yard. How did life change for you once you knew you were pregnant?
So I did everything exactly the same until one day I was putting a hay net up in a livery stable, and I was putting it, for some reason I mean, this is definitely a conversation for another day. Do you tie it to a bit of string, or to what are you supposed to do there? Anyway, she ties it to a bit of string, so I was tying it to this bit of string, leant back on the hay net to pull it up, and it snapped, and I fell backwards into the stable, and the horse spooked and probably missed me by about 2 centimeters, and this was an 18-hand sports horse that could have killed me, and it really scared me, actually. And so I was a lot more careful after that, and actually probably a lot more reluctant, not to do stuff, but reluctant to put myself in harm's way, knowing that I was carrying a baby. But I think, I don't know how you feel, but with your first, you don't really know what to expect until you have them, do you? And so you're careful, but equally, I think with the second, I would probably be more careful, because you know what's coming.
I think for me, I obviously am very fortunate in the position that I have my horse away from home in the moment, and I had the whole time that I was pregnant.
So you had the help.
So I had the help. But that being said, there's definitely things that I did differently with him when I found out I was pregnant, because again, he's a big boy and he's not always the most coordinated.
And he's young.
So
you can forgive him for not being coordinated and not knowing where his feet are and spooking.
And just before I found out I was pregnant, he actually had kicked someone on the way out to the field.
Naughty Leo.
I don't think actually it was malicious. I think it was a fear-based thing, but he struck out and he hurt someone.
That's a protective mum, if ever I've heard one.
He's a special boy.
He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't mean it.
Well, he is a brute, but he's not a complete arsehole, in my opinion. But anyway, I didn't lead him out from that moment.
Yeah, that's
because I thought that's just tempting fate a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah. Other than that, the only thing that I didn't really do was I just found picking out feet so exhausting.
Oh, I never picked out their feet. I just let them all get thrush.
No, you didn't.
No, I did. That was another thing actually, as well as taking the wheelbarrows around, that I sort of refused to do, because I couldn't actually physically get down there, and also by the time I had got down there to pick their feet out, I was then worried that I wouldn't be able to get up quickly enough if they spook or jump or do something. So yeah, somebody else had to do that. Just want to talk quickly about the actual. I know that, to be honest, I think the NHS recommend that you don't ride at all, don't they?
Slightly unrealistic.
Very unrealistic, really. If you've got a horse, the minute you get pregnant, they can't just be abandoned. So please don't do that. But I did read something in all my hours of Googling that said that when your baby is under 12 weeks, they are very well protected within your pelvic girdle. And before I'd read this, I actually thought that the first 3 months was the unsafest,
most critical time.
It's most critical time, and I think it is, because obviously if you have a trauma or a fall, then that can that could induce a miscarriage. But equally, the actual baby is better protected within you, so they are safer in that first 3 months. And then when they get bigger and they're outside the pelvic girdle, that's when having a fall could risk them. But I didn't. I don't think I did have a miscarriage before Olive. But I can imagine that if you have had a miscarriage, or you've lost a baby, or you've struggled to get pregnant, that then your first baby you would be a lot more worried
and careful about.
And in that situation, it might be that you would decide just to not ride and give your horse 9 months off.
Yeah.
Or give them to somebody else to ride.
And I think that's something really worth mentioning as well, is we are quite get on with it sort of people. We are, but also we are.
Do you mean horsey people in general?
Us too, as personalities. Yeah. But also we didn't know what we didn't know. These were our first children.
We didn't know how you'd react.
We hadn't had any traumatic events in the lead up to that, if that makes sense. You'd obviously struggled with your fertility, but you hadn't had a loss of a child, or an event that would have changed perhaps how you address things in the first instance. And for me, I was just so pig-headed that I just went into it as I always did. But we can totally see how you might reconsider, like,
I think seeing
horses.
Friends, knowing people that have lost a baby or they've had a miscarriage, and seeing the effect that it has on them, I can also see the benefits to not riding. Because if you are worried about that and you're thinking about it the whole time, for me, it helped to ride, because I find that when you're on a horse, it's the only time when you have to think about. You can only think about the horse. You can only think about what you're doing in terms of controlling that horse, and you just think about riding. And so it sort of took my mind off of every other worry I had: work, having a baby, finances, relationship, everything was to carry on riding. But if you can't compartmentalise and you are riding and you are thinking about all of these things, it's going to affect the way you ride. You're not going to enjoy it anyway.
And you're not going to be present.
Which
allows room for error even more.
Yeah, exactly. And so we can definitely see the pros and cons. But either way, there is nothing wrong with either. And I think I actually heard somebody say it was a trainer. I heard him say that he has never seen a horse come back from a break worse off. And so whether the break is 9 months, or if they have a year off, or if it's a couple of months at the end of your pregnancy and then you're straight back on, having a break it's never going to be bad for them.
And so that kind of leads us to, I guess, the aftermath of being pregnant.
Oh, goodness me.
Which we will talk about in greater depth in another episode, I think. But how do you think riding and caring for your horses actually has helped in the long run? In a nutshell.
Helped with what?
So has obviously you did a fair amount of horse care and riding whilst you're pregnant. You stopped really late on in the day, right?
Well, it kept me fit.
Yeah. It kept you fit.
So that was a big thing.
Kept you mentally sane.
Kept me. Well, it didn't keep me mentally sane, but I think it kind of helped in making me not go insane.
But did it help you with your recovery in the long run, or did it hinder it, do you think?
That is a really difficult question to answer, because I had this thing, which actually, if you're a rider, you should look out for it. If you're a rider and you're pregnant, it's worth knowing about. It's called diastasis something or other.
Diastasis recti.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's when your stomach muscles split and then don't go back after you have a baby. And it's quite common with horse riders, quite common with gymnasts. And I had a gap. I've now got a gap in my belly muscles, which is like 3 centimeters wide or something. It's quite big. And when I was pregnant, I thought I was going to get this because I pulled myself out of a pool and my stomach went into like a little cone shape. And I was like, oh, that doesn't look too good. So riding throughout my pregnancy helped with the recovery of the pregnancy. But if I hadn't been a rider in the first place, I probably wouldn't have had that happen. Does that make sense?
Interesting, because I haven't had or know that I have diastasis recti. I'm tough.
Yeah.
Very tough. But also, I think, just for reference, everybody, Sophie is tiny. Sophie is a tiny.
We're different shaped people.
Sophie is a tiny person. How tall are you?
5'3".
And you're very petite, aren't
tiny.
you?
I'm very small.
UK dress size?
6 to 8.
Yeah. So teeny tiny. Whereas I'm 5'7". I've always carried a little bit of extra weight. But
broader.
Yeah, I'm a lot broader.
Yeah.
And even when I was skinny, as an adult, I've never been below a UK size 12 ever. And I would say I'm a UK.
We're definitely very different shaped people.
Whereas,
and I think it does make a difference with how you recover and how you carry. And
so I obviously didn't know I was pregnant for such a long time, but also when my midwife was sort of like examining me, she was saying, there's a reason why you don't know you're pregnant. Your core is so strong. I didn't show until 28 weeks.
That's true, yeah.
Not just because I had got a bit of extra padding, but because my core was just holding him in there tight, to the point where when I had my C-section, the registrar was saying, gosh, you're really tough to cut through.
Oh, wow.
And that's why I didn't show for so long during my pregnancy. But interestingly, I think the strength and endurance work with caring for your horse and riding your horse really helped with that, because I was doing so much for such a long time. Yeah,
it does help, doesn't it? But it also, in my case, didn't. In a lot of ways.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about us, but we did want to also get some riding or horse care whilst pregnant comments from, I guess, other mums and other parents. I've got one from a close friend, Millie, yes, who is currently 30 weeks pregnant. So she's yet to have her baby. She's got a little girl on the way who's due in December. And Millie is, again, a crazy horse person that has a lot of responsibilities on the go. She has her own small holding and farm. She has a couple of dairy cows. She has a couple of cows that they produce for meat. She has her own doggy daycare business, and she's a lady on the go all the time. But she currently has 4 horses, none of them ridden by her. She has a youngster. Actually, she has a youngster, 3-year-old turning 4. She's got a yearling. She's got mare that was mother to the yearling, who is a sports horse that she had.
Wow, she got her work cut out.
Yeah.
Her first baby.
Yeah. And her partner is away all the time because he's a contractor, so he's never around. But I asked Millie,
come on Millie, come and join us.
I asked Millie a couple of questions that I thought might interest people, as she's a non-rider at the moment.
So she's not riding. She's given up.
She's not riding, and she hasn't ridden for a while because she has health problems of her own.
Okay.
So I asked her, how much do you think being pregnant has changed how confident you are around your horses. And Millie said to me, she said, hugely, I really worry about being squished, kicked, when I'm leading, being trapped in a stable, if I'm carrying buckets, if I'm carrying hay nets or feed, etc. Because so many of the horses that I have at home are babies and they don't know how to react yet. So I thought that was really interesting from her as a seasoned horse person who's had horses her whole life. And who isn't a shy wallflower at all. I also asked her, I said, have you had to change how you care for your horses since being pregnant? And she said, yes, I've changed everything. I can't do them independently, even emptying wheelbarrows or carrying shavings or water buckets, etc., or if I'm bending over. But particularly more in the last trimester, she has had to employ help for 2 days a week to do the big stuff, because Millie also has her horses at home. She doesn't have extra yard help to do that.
But that's difficult though as well, isn't it? Because you're employing somebody at a time when you're worried about finances.
Yeah.
Like, you've got all this stuff to worry about, like having a baby and not being able to do the horses, and then on top of that you've got to pay more. Like, and know you're coming into a period where you're not going to get paid, so it's like,
and also potentially the trust factor with those horses as well.
Yeah,
they're your first babies, so getting the right help also, I think, is mega important.
I was so lucky with Oscar that I've got some friends and supportive people around me, and they helped. But
it's tough. It is really
because it is hard. People don't do what you're asking them to do half the time, do they?
No,
we do.
Clearly. But no, it's difficult to get the right help as well. And then the last question I asked Mills was, do you feel pressure or guilt from family and friends with you having horses? Because obviously we've talked about that ourselves. And she said, no pressure. They know me far better than that.
There's a recurring theme here that we kind of do what we want.
And I wonder
we don't take advice. We won't be told what to do.
I wonder if that is similar for many horse owners out there.
That we just get judged and don't care. And do it anyway.
So thank you, Millie, for giving us some answers on that. It's really interesting to hear from someone that isn't a rider as well.
Well, also somebody that's actually pregnant right this second. So we can only look back. We can't
tell you what it's like to be in it, because we're past that.
Yeah, we've gone past that, and there's quite a lot in between, to be honest.
So thank you for that, Millie.
Thanks, Millie.
So that was our episode on riding and
whilst pregnant.
We'd really like to hear from some of you about your experiences whilst riding or caring for your horse while pregnant. So if there's anything that you'd like to contribute on this, or things that you feel we haven't said and you want more questions to us, please feel free to get in touch with us via the socials. We're really interested to hear how this episode has perhaps affected you or not, as the case may be. If you're still pregnant at the moment and you're wondering what to do, or maybe you're early days pregnant, it'd be really interesting to hear where you are on your journey. So please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Also, if you are a midwife or a doctor that rides and has had a kid potentially in the past, and you have a more medical point of view than we do, we'd love to chat to you and have you on and continue the conversation. So get in touch.
Absolutely. And obviously, please, if you are still pregnant and you have horses, do not take our advice as gospel. Do not take our advice, our perhaps pig-headedness as gospel. Just because we were fine does not necessarily mean that's going to be the case for everyone, and everyone's situation is individual. So please be careful, take advice from your doctors, midwives, and obviously trainers and people that are on your yard. Sometimes we do need to be told by other people that what we're doing isn't safe. So remember, keep yourself and your baby safe. And I think that's it. That's it for this episode. We'll look forward to catching you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.